I never thought I'd witness a daylight heist on my own driveway, yet here I am, coffee frozen in my hand, staring through the kitchen window as a 40-ton tow truck growls toward my $42,000 restored 28-foot Skeeter bass boat. Chains clank like prison shackles. Diesel smoke billows black against the Florida sunrise, and there, prancing across my crushed shell driveway in spotless white Louboutin heels, is Delilah Thornberry, HOA president, self-appointed lake dictator, and certified professional nightmare. She's waving that leather clipboard like it's the Constitution, screaming about a vessel-size violation she invented 5 minutes ago. But Delilah missed one tiny detail in her power trip. I don't just own this dock. I own the entire 42-acre private lake her precious Sunset Yacht Club has been trespassing on, rent-free, for 15 straight years. Every champagne brunch, every illegal jet ski ramp, every Instagram sunset they stole. My land, my rules. What would you do if an HOA Karen tried to tow your pride and joy? Drop your craziest neighbor war story below and tell me where you're watching from. My name is Brock Millfield, and 6 months ago I thought I'd found paradise. After 30 years fixing Black Hawk helicopters for the Navy, from scorching Persian Gulf hangars to storm-tossed aircraft carriers in the South China Sea, I'd finally made it home to the 420-acre spread my grandfather Ezra left me in Central Florida. The man had built a fishing camp back in 1943, and now it was my workshop, my sanctuary, and my fresh start at 52. Lake Millfield sits like a liquid emerald in the center of the property. 42 acres of spring-fed crystal water surrounded by towering cypress and ancient live oaks draped in Spanish moss that sways like old curtains. The intoxicating smell of cypress mulch mixed with marine varnish from my workshop creates this therapeutic zone that my cramped Norfolk apartment never provided. The sound of my disability pension hitting the bank covers basics, but boat restoration? That's pure medicine for my soul and solid side income. Grandpa Ezra had always welcomed local folks to fish his lake. "Fish responsibly and respect the land," he'd say with that weathered grin, and that was the only rule. I kept the tradition alive because that's what real neighbors do. The county property tax records going back to 1943 show every square inch, including every drop of lake water, belongs to the Millfield family. Always has, always will. Then, Hurricane Delilah hit my peaceful world. Picture a 58-year-old former Miami real estate predator who'd clawed her way to HOA dictatorship of Sunset Estates, the pretentious gated community squatting next to my property. White Tesla, designer everything, and that leather Hermes portfolio she brandishes like a legal weapon. This woman actually strutted onto my land unannounced on a Tuesday morning, her Louboutin heels grinding my crushed shell driveway like she was marking territory. "Mr. Millfield," she barked without even a fake smile, "your oversized vessel blatantly violates established community waterfront aesthetic standards." My vessel? I stared at my pride and absolute joy. A 1987 Skeeter bass boat I'd spent 18 months lovingly restoring from a rust bucket into a masterpiece. Custom Humminbird electronics, flawless metallic blue paint that sparkled like jewels, every bolt and wire perfect. $42,000 of therapeutic restoration sitting on its aluminum trailer in my driveway. "Ma'am, with all due respect," I replied, keeping my military composure, "I'm not part of your HOA. This property predates your little development by 45 years. The texture of her fake leather clipboard felt cheap as she waved it like conducting a symphony of stupidity. "We maintain jurisdiction over all waterfront aesthetic standards within our community zone. Boats exceeding 25 feet require formal permits through our architectural review board." The sheer audacity made my jaw clench. This woman was claiming authority over land my family had owned since she was in diapers, citing some fictional, residential vessel-size ordinance she'd obviously invented during her morning coffee. "We'll see about that attitude, Mr. Millfield," she hissed, her heels clicking like gunshots as she retreated to her overpriced electric car. That morning, Florida humidity clung like a wet blanket, while gentle lake breezes carried the intoxicating perfume of blooming jasmine and orange blossoms. I watched her Tesla disappear, already formulating my counterattack strategy. 30 years of military service teaches you to recognize bullies immediately and exactly how to destroy them systematically. 3 days later, Delilah returned with backup that looked like a bad cop movie. Bradley Crampton, the sweaty Wells Fargo branch manager, kept tugging at his tie like it was a noose, while Delilah strutted forward with a document so official-looking it probably cost her a fortune at FedEx office. 48 hours for complete compliance, she announced, slapping the papers into my oil-stained hands with the drama of serving a warrant. Your vessel flagrantly violates the Florida Community Standards Enforcement Act, subsection 12B. I studied the paperwork while Bradley's nervous breathing sounded like a broken air conditioner. The document was pure fiction, impressive legal jargon, fake statute numbers, the works. But it looked convincing enough to fool most folks who'd never dealt with real legal documents. Delilah claimed the previous property owner had formally agreed to comprehensive HOA waterfront oversight in 2009, which sounded about as believable as her claiming to be a natural blonde. Time to become a detective. The Orange County Courthouse smelled like old paper and bureaucratic dreams as I spent the next 2 days digging through property records. Marjorie, the county clerk who remembered Grandpa's legendary bass tournaments, guided me through decades of documentation with the patience of a saint. The gentle whir of the microfiche machine and musty scent of archived documents became oddly soothing as I uncovered the truth. What I found made my hands shake with anticipation. The smoking gun sat right there in faded blue ink from 1987. Grandpa had indeed sold 120 acres to Pinnacle Development Corporation, the land that became Sunset Estates, but buried in the contract language was pure gold. Recreational lake access granted at sole discretion of property owner. B. No permanent easements, no automatic rights, nothing. Just permission that could be revoked any time. I remembered something my old Navy JAG friend had taught me years ago. In Florida, easements have to be properly recorded in writing to be legally binding. You can't just use someone's land for decades and claim ownership. That's called trespassing, not acquiring rights. My counterattack launched immediately. I photocopied every document, installed ring cameras around the property perimeter, and drove steel posts into the sandy soil at all 4 lake access points. The satisfying thunk of the post hole digger felt like planting victory flags as I mounted private property, lake access by permission only signs. The certified letter to Delilah cited chapter and verse of my property rights while demanding immediate retraction of her theft threats. But Queen Delilah wasn't finished playing government. She called the sheriff's office, voice probably dripping with fake tears, claiming I was threatening innocent community members with violence and creating a hostile environment for peaceful residents. Sheriff Martinez rolled up 20 minutes later, took one look at my documentation, and delivered the legal education Delilah desperately needed. "Ma'am," he said with the patience of someone who'd dealt with civilian drama before, "this gentleman owns this land free and clear. You've got about as much authority here as I do on the moon." Delilah's face transformed through several shades of red as she threatened to drag in the Florida Department of Environmental Protection over my alleged violations. Duke from the Marine Supply Store had mentioned that some yacht club from the fancy neighborhood treated my lake like their personal marina every weekend. 18 boats strong, including our nervous friend Bradley, some retired judge, and even a city councilman. These entitled weekend warriors anchored wherever they pleased, never once acknowledging my friendly waves from shore. The sweet aroma of orange blossoms mixed with victory as I watched Delilah speed away in her Tesla, probably plotting her next desperate move. But I'd learned something valuable from 3 decades of military service. When bullies realize they can't intimidate you, they always escalate. And escalation was exactly what I was counting on. Day 3 of Delilah's personal war arrived with all the subtlety of a meteor strike. I'd just returned from Publix, truck bed loaded with enough groceries to survive the apocalypse, when the earth-shaking rumble of a diesel engine rattled every bolt in my workshop. A massive, reliable towing rig was backing into my driveway like some mechanical dinosaur coming to devour my pride and joy. Jimmy, the tow truck operator, looked about as comfortable as a preacher in a strip club. Poor bastard kept apologizing while explaining that some Homeowners Association had hired him for emergency violation removal. The acrid stench of diesel exhaust mixed with the metallic taste of pure rage as I watched Delilah directing this grand theft auto from her pristine Tesla. Windows up, AC probably blasting. "This is completely legitimate community safety enforcement," she announced through her barely cracked window, voice muffled like she was speaking from inside a tomb. My beautiful Skeeter was already half-winched onto the flatbed, its custom metallic blue paint gleaming mockingly in the brutal Florida sun. "Whoa there, partner," I called to Jimmy, whipping out my phone faster than a gunslinger. "Let's see that court order authorizing this little seizure operation." Jimmy's weathered face scrunched up like he was trying to solve calculus. "Well, sir, truth is I don't have no actual court order. Just this work order from the lady there." He gestured toward Delilah's fortress of German engineering. I pulled out those precious property deed copies, now laminated and carried everywhere like a soldier carries ammunition. Jimmy studied the documents while Delilah's protests reached frequencies that could probably shatter wine glasses 3 counties away. The moment reality penetrated his skull, that he was being manipulated into committing felony theft, that winch started reversing faster than a politician backing away from campaign promises. Sheriff Martinez materialized in exactly 12 minutes, which told me my address had definitely been flagged for priority response. After reviewing my ironclad documentation, he delivered another educational beatdown that left Delilah's legal pretensions scattered like roadkill. "Ma'am, this is your official trespassing warning. Any future unauthorized entry results in immediate arrest. And that thing about false legal authority, that's called fraud, and the state takes it seriously." That evening, 30 years of military intelligence training kicked in. Rule number 1, always verify your enemy's actual capabilities versus their theatrical claims. A simple Florida Department of State Business Registry search revealed pure comedy gold. Sunset Estates Property Owners Association existed only in Delilah's imagination. No incorporation papers, no legal standing, no authority. They were basically a neighborhood book club with delusions of governmental grandeur, collecting dues and issuing fines with about as much legal power as my mailbox. My old squadron commander used to say, "Most wars are won by whoever bothers reading the instruction manual." Tonight, I was holding their instruction manual, and it was completely blank. Bradley attempted supporting Delilah's crumbling position with nervous babble about banking regulations, but sweat was pouring down his face like he was confessing to war crimes. The retired judge tried intimidating me with condescending lectures about prescriptive easements, but 3 decades of military service had given me a black belt in detecting bullshit artists. The community freeze-out began immediately. HOA members started treating me like I was radioactive at Winn-Dixie and the hardware store. Duke mentioned the yacht club had called an emergency war council about their imaginary lake access crisis, while Precious Rosie at Cracker Barrel whispered that Delilah was spreading venomous lies about my dangerous PTSD episodes and unpredictable violent tendencies. The amateur surveillance operation launched that week with all the sophistication of middle schoolers playing spy games. Yacht club members began cruising past my property like sharks circling prey, telephoto lenses hanging out windows like mechanical periscopes. The coordination reeked of organized harassment. Unfortunately for them, they were messing with someone who'd actually studied real surveillance techniques. Tommy Hendricks, my former Navy JAG brother now crushing civilians in Tampa courts, confirmed what Florida law made crystal clear. "Brock," he laughed until he snorted, "these clowns have about as much enforcement authority as my golden retriever. Document their stupidity and watch them self-destruct." The humid evening air carried jasmine perfume and the gentle splash of feeding fish as I sat on my grandfather's dock, watching fireflies dance over water that belonged to my family. Delilah's desperation was becoming more pathetic daily, but experience warned me that cornered animals often bite hardest right before they die. Time to prepare for her final desperate gambit. Delilah's mental breakdown reached spectacular new heights as anonymous complaints started carpet bombing every state agency like she was conducting psychological warfare. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection received panicked reports about my illegal toxic fuel storage operation, while Florida Fish and Wildlife got breathless calls about my supposed unlicensed commercial fishing empire. Apparently, restoring boats in my own workshop now qualified as environmental terrorism in Queen Delilah's alternate universe. Orange County Code Enforcement showed up Tuesday morning with Inspector Rodriguez looking more embarrassed than a priest in a brothel. He apologized repeatedly while investigating neighborhood complaints about my unpermitted commercial marine repair facility. After inspecting my workshop, which was cleaner than most hospital surgical suites, he shook his head in disgust. "Sir, these are obviously vindictive false reports from someone with serious psychological problems," he muttered, the smell of his coffee mixing with motor oil and morning humidity. "Whoever's doing this could face criminal charges for filing fraudulent complaints." Meanwhile, the Sunset Yacht Club decided to escalate their entitlement to levels that would make European royalty blush. Columbus Day weekend brought 14 boats roaring onto my lake like D-Day invasion forces, complete with enough arrogance to power a small nation. These entitled weekend warriors constructed an elaborate, unauthorized dock system along my pristine shoreline. Cleats, bumpers, electrical hookups, and even a goddamn tiki bar. The sickly sweet stench of expensive sunscreen mixed with spilled beer began poisoning my grandfather's sanctuary while Judge Pike's massive 38-foot sea ray anchored dead center like a floating middle finger. Jimmy Buffett music blasted loud enough to register on seismic monitors 3 counties away as Delilah pranced around her illegal marina, directing boat traffic with the confidence of Napoleon commanding at Waterloo. I approached their floating frat party with diplomatic restraint, politely suggesting they relocate to the public boat ramp down the road. "This represents decades of established traditional community lake access," Delilah shrieked, death-gripping that leather portfolio like it contained state secrets. Her blood-red fingernails matched her increasingly unhinged expression. Judge Pike, perched on his flybridge clutching a margarita the size of a fishbowl, launched into condescending lectures about prescriptive easements and historical usage precedents. Bradley nervously babbled about the banking community's substantial financial investment in lake access, sweat stains spreading across his cheap shirt like spilled motor oil. But I'd done my homework. Tommy had explained that Florida prescriptive easements require 20-plus years of hostile usage without permission, and Grandpa's meticulously kept guest logs proved he'd personally welcomed every fishing party for decades. I could still hear his voice. "Coffee's always hot for folks who respect the land. Permission destroys any claim of hostile usage faster than sunlight kills vampires." The anonymous threat letters escalated into full terrorism that week. Concerned Citizens for Lake Environmental Safety, Delilah's latest creative writing project, claimed my restoration work was poisoning native wildlife with toxic chemical runoff. They demanded a $50,000 environmental impact study, obviously hoping to bankrupt me through bureaucratic warfare. The postal investigation traced every letter to Bradley's Wells Fargo branch. These criminal masterminds had apparently never heard of forensic mail tracking. Delilah's property value manipulation scheme became pathetically transparent when she started calling real estate appraisers, spinning elaborate lies about dangerous property disputes threatening market stability. She was manufacturing evidence that my hostility was destroying everyone's investments, probably planning to force a fire sale of my land. The surveillance operation transformed into full-scale stalking. Cars parked on County Road 437 24 hours daily, telephoto lenses tracking my every movement like I was some celebrity drug addict. The coordination required serious planning and multiple conspirators. Then Tommy dropped the nuclear bomb that changed everything. During his deep dive research into the yacht club's legal status, he'd discovered their liability insurance had quietly lapsed in 2019. Every boat on my lake represented massive uninsured liability exposure, slip and fall accidents, boat collisions, alcohol-related incidents. These financial geniuses were risking their entire life savings for weekend lake parties. I spent the holiday weekend documenting 52 separate trespassing incidents, photographing severe environmental damage to ancient cypress root systems, and recording every boat registration for evidence. The ecological destruction alone could trigger mandatory cleanup costs exceeding $100,000 under Florida environmental protection statutes. Dr. Susan Kraft materialized beside me at the Saturday farmers market like an answer to prayers. This retired University of Florida environmental science professor had been quietly building resistance within Sunset Estates against Delilah's increasingly tyrannical reign. "Most homeowners have no idea what she's been doing with our money and authority," Dr. Kraft whispered, while the intoxicating aroma of fresh strawberries and blooming jasmine created an oddly peaceful backdrop for discussing revolution. "We've got 38 families ready to demand her removal." The enemy was fracturing from within. Delilah's desperation had finally pushed reasonable people past their breaking point, and the smart money was abandoning ship before it hit the reef. Friday morning started ordinary until Marjorie from the county courthouse called with news that would detonate this entire war like a nuclear bomb. Her voice carried that trembling excitement usually reserved for lottery winners or people catching their cheating spouses red-handed. "Brock, honey, you need to get your behind down here right now," she whispered into the phone like she was revealing the location of Jimmy Hoffa's body. "I found something in our file digitization project that's going to absolutely destroy that horrible woman." The courthouse smelled like old leather and bureaucratic secrets as Marjorie led me through corridors lined with decades of forgotten legal battles. Her weathered fingers, soft as worn velvet, trembled slightly as she pulled out a manila folder thick enough to stop bullets. "This here's the original 1987 agreement between your precious grandfather and Pinnacle Development Corporation," she said, spreading yellowed documents across her desk like a treasure map. "Look at page 17, section 4C, and prepare to have your mind blown." My hands actually shook as I read the smoking gun that would end Delilah's reign of terror. Buried in dense legal language was pure dynamite. The yacht club wasn't just trespassing. They were legally required to pay annual licensing fees of $3,200 for recreational lake privileges. The contract mandated that Pinnacle Development collect these fees from every homeowner and remit them directly to the property owner. But here's where the story gets absolutely beautiful. The agreement clearly stated that lake access privileges terminate immediately upon any non-payment. I flipped through payment records with growing euphoria, searching for any evidence of compliance. 0 payments, not one goddamn penny in 13 years. Current arrears totaled $51,200 plus compound interest and penalties that would make a loan shark weep with joy. The financial fraud rabbit hole descended deeper than the Mariana Trench. Property records revealed how Delilah had systematically destroyed the previous HOA president, Martha Kellerman, in 2019. Poor Martha had been asking uncomfortable questions about missing lake access fees before she mysteriously resigned for health reasons and fled to North Carolina like a political refugee. Delilah's real estate empire, Thornberry Premier Realty, had represented 67% of original Sunset Estate sales, with commission structures tied directly to marketing exclusive private lake access privileges. This fraudulent enhancement added approximately $75,000 premium to each property sale. Total scam value across the entire development, $3.5 million in stolen equity. The insurance liability bomb made Chernobyl look like a kitchen fire. The 1987 agreement required yacht club operations to maintain minimum $3 million comprehensive liability coverage. Coverage had been secretly dropped in 2019. Coincidentally, the same year Martha was eliminated for asking questions about financial irregularities. Every single boat on my lake represented potential million-dollar lawsuits waiting to happen. Slip and fall accidents, boat collisions, alcohol-related injuries, drowning incidents, all completely uninsured. The homeowners believed their monthly fees included comprehensive insurance coverage because that's what Delilah had systematically lied about for years. Current HOA dues statements revealed the most infuriating theft of all. Every homeowner faithfully paid $275 monthly for lake maintenance and access assessment, fees that 47 families had been paying religiously for 13 years. Total systematically stolen, $2.1 million. Amount actually paid for legitimate lake access, absolutely nothing. The missing money had vanished into administrative expenses and community beautification projects that mysteriously always seemed to benefit Delilah's real estate business. Professional landscaping around her model properties, expensive photography for marketing materials, promotional videos featuring exclusive lake access she'd never legally controlled. The intoxicating aroma of victory mixed with dust motes dancing in golden afternoon sunlight streaming through tall courthouse windows. I'd uncovered a fraud scheme so monumentally brazen it made Enron executives look like choir boys. My legal position was absolutely bulletproof. The development contract granted me unilateral authority to immediately terminate all lake access, collect 13 years of arrears with compound interest, and pursue comprehensive environmental damage recovery. Tommy confirmed this evidence could support federal criminal charges for wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. But sitting in that quiet courthouse sanctuary, surrounded by centuries of accumulated legal wisdom, a profound realization struck me. Most yacht club members were innocent victims of Delilah's systematic deception, not willing conspirators. They'd paid substantial money believing they were purchasing legitimate, properly insured lake access rights. The nuclear option, immediate total termination of lake access, would devastate honest families who'd been victimized just as ruthlessly as I had. The superior strategy crystallized like morning dew: expose the fraud publicly, remove Delilah permanently, and offer victimized homeowners an honest path forward. Transform victims into allies while ensuring the real criminal received exactly what she deserved. Justice was finally coming for Queen Delilah, but it would wear the white hat of community healing rather than the black mask of pure vengeance. Saturday morning found me plotting Delilah's downfall like a general preparing for the final battle. Tommy Hendricks agreed to handle my case pro bono after I described the scope of her fraud. His lawyer brain practically salivated over the evidence. "Military brotherhood runs deeper than blood, brother," he growled through the phone. "And this bitch picked the wrong veteran to screw with." His research confirmed we had enough ammunition to destroy Delilah's empire from orbit, but we agreed on surgical precision, expose the fraud publicly, remove her from power, and offer honest homeowners a path to redemption. Building the evidence portfolio became my obsession. I spread documents across my workshop table like battle plans, the smell of marine varnish mixing with the intoxicating aroma of approaching victory. 3 days of forensic accounting revealed the ugly truth. $2.1 million stolen, $0 legitimately spent, with every penny funding Delilah's personal real estate empire. The environmental damage assessment made my blood boil hotter than a Florida summer. Certified marine surveyor Jake Morrison documented Cypress root system destruction that would cost $150,000 to repair properly. "Whoever authorized this construction should be in prison," he muttered, photographing damage to trees that predated the Civil War. Video testimonials from deceived homeowners broke my heart and hardened my resolve simultaneously. Watching 70-year-old retirees describe emptying savings accounts for fake lake access rights made me want to personally strangle Delilah with her own designer scarves. My intelligence network expanded faster than wildfire in August. Duke reported that half the marine supply customers were questioning Delilah's financial management, while Sweet Rosie whispered about heated HOA board meetings where members demanded answers about missing money. Even Pete the mailman had juicy gossip about residents receiving mysterious emergency assessment bills for projects that never materialized. Dr. Susan Kraft became my secret weapon, a brilliant retired professor whose coalition of 38 families represented enough voting power to democratically remove Delilah. "Most people are decent," she explained over coffee that smelled like hope and tasted like justice. "They just needed someone to show them the truth." The community recruitment campaign required the diplomatic skills of a hostage negotiator. I approached individual yacht club members at grocery stores and gas stations, armed with grandfather's historical photographs showing decades of genuine community cooperation. Images of multi-generational fishing tournaments and volunteer lake cleanups painted a picture of what real neighborly relationships looked like. When homeowners saw the original 1987 development agreement for the first time, their reactions were priceless. Shock melted into outrage as they realized they'd been systematically robbed for over a decade. "That lying bitch told us the fees covered comprehensive insurance," gasped retired teacher Margaret Walsh, her hands shaking with fury. Professional preparation transformed my workshop into mission control. Environmental testing confirmed pristine baseline conditions, while insurance consultations revealed catastrophic liability exposure from uninsured activities. A single drowning or boat collision could bankrupt entire families. Delilah's greed had turned weekend fun into financial Russian roulette. Tommy's legal presentation would make Supreme Court justices weep with admiration. Color-coded financial charts showed the theft in terms so simple that preschoolers could understand, while proposed solutions offered genuine hope for community healing. Media coordination felt like orchestrating D-Day. Sarah Bellamy from the Orlando Sentinel had been tracking similar HOA fraud cases statewide. Our story would serve as the perfect cautionary tale about unchecked neighborhood tyranny. Local TV confirmed live coverage of what promised to be the most dramatic community showdown in Central Florida history. Sheriff Martinez received detailed briefings about potential criminal charges, while federal authorities confirmed interest in mail fraud prosecution. Delilah's systematic use of certified letters containing false claims had crossed into federal territory. The reconciliation framework emerged like a peace treaty ending generations of war. Legitimate lake access would cost $400 annually per boat, enough for proper insurance, environmental monitoring, and transparent maintenance managed through the community credit union where every transaction would be public record. Multiple battle plans covered every scenario. Nuclear option, immediate access termination for criminals only. Moderate option, 90-day grace periods for honest homeowners. Collaborative option, transform this nightmare into a national model for community cooperation. The vision extended beyond simple revenge into genuine legacy building. Annual festivals celebrating grandfathers' conservation work could fund marine science scholarships. Educational programs would teach sustainable fishing to future generations, while environmental restoration projects would heal the damage Delilah's greed had caused. As evening painted Lake Millfield in brilliant oranges and purples, fireflies began their nightly dance above water that belonged to my family for generations. The sweet perfume of blooming jasmine carried by gentle breezes felt like grandfather's spirit blessing this righteous crusade. Delilah had built her kingdom on lies, theft, and community division. But truth, justice, and genuine neighborly love were about to destroy her empire so thoroughly that future HOA tyrants would study her downfall as a warning. The final battle was coming, and Queen Delilah was about to discover what happens when you declare war on someone who actually knows how to fight. Delilah's psychological meltdown reached spectacular heights as she declared total war through an emergency HOA meeting notice that read like a terrorist threat assessment. Hand-delivered to every mailbox in Sunset Estates, the official announcement branded me a dangerous military extremist threatening community safety and property values. The woman had apparently graduated from petty tyranny to full-blown paranoid delusion. Her coordinated character assassination campaign launched with the precision of a military psyops operation. Anonymous flyers mysteriously appeared overnight throughout the development, warning residents that I planned to ban all recreational lake access and construct a commercial fishing resort for massive profits. Social media posts on the community Facebook group painted me as an unstable PTSD veteran with a documented history of violent episodes against peaceful elderly residents. The lies were so monumentally ridiculous, they bordered on performance art. According to Queen Delilah's creative writing, I was simultaneously a homeless vagrant living in a shack and a millionaire developer scheming to destroy their retirement paradise for profit. Bradley's Wells Fargo branch transformed into a financial torture chamber designed to harass me into submission. My routine banking visits became epic ordeals requiring enhanced security verification procedures that stretched 10-minute transactions into 2-hour nightmares. The branch manager claimed mysterious federal compliance irregularities needed investigation, probably hoping to destroy my credit and force property foreclosure. The smell of fear and desperation hung in that air-conditioned bank lobby like cheap cologne. Meanwhile, the surveillance operation escalated to levels that would make North Korean intelligence operatives jealous. Professional-grade cameras appeared in trees overlooking my property like mechanical vultures, while systematic drone flights mapped every square inch of my daily routine with satellite precision. Multiple cars maintained round-the-clock surveillance along County Road 437, telephoto lenses tracking my movements like I was planning nuclear terrorism. The coordination required serious financial resources and military-level organization. Delilah was hemorrhaging money like a punctured oil tanker, but her harassment blitzkrieg was spectacularly backfiring within her own kingdom. Dr. Kraft organized a clandestine Truth About Lake Access meeting that drew 31 shell-shocked homeowners despite Delilah's frantic attempts at suppression. When I presented ironclad evidence of systematic financial fraud, the stunned silence could have powered half of Orlando. "Sweet Jesus," whispered retired accountant Robert Bellamy, his hands trembling as he studied the financial documents. "We've been paying for lake access we never legally received, and there's zero insurance if someone dies out there?" The community fault lines cracked wide open as decent residents began openly rebelling against Delilah's increasingly fascist behavior. Local businesses reported coordinated boycott attempts against my patronage, but Duke and Rosie publicly refused to participate in systematic persecution of a decorated military hero. The Central Florida Chamber of Commerce issued a scathing statement condemning organized intimidation tactics against respected community members, which probably sent Delilah's blood pressure into orbit. The bribery attempt arrived Wednesday evening at the Wawa gas station like something from a bad mob movie. Bradley approached me while I was pumping gas, sweating bullets despite the evening coolness, clutching a manila envelope thick enough to contain nuclear launch codes. "Look, we've got a reasonable solution," he stammered, his nervous energy practically visible in the fluorescent lighting. $150,000 cash, tonight, for permanent lake access easement. No lawyers, no complications, problem completely disappears. The envelope contained actual cash bundles and a pre-written easement document that would have given the yacht club permanent rights to my family's land for generations. The desperation stank worse than the gas fumes. "Appreciate the offer, but I'll stick with legitimate legal channels," I replied calmly, secretly recording every word for evidence. "Bribery's a federal crime, Bradley. Might want to remember that." Tommy's investigation uncovered Delilah's extensive criminal history across multiple Florida developments, a documented pattern of systematically defrauding communities through amenity misrepresentation. The state licensing board maintained formal complaints dating back 5 years, with our case representing her most ambitious theft yet. The whistleblower materialized like an answer to prayers. Former HOA board member Patricia Novak intercepted me at the Saturday farmers market with intelligence that made my blood run cold. Delilah was planning to file fabricated police reports claiming I'd threatened to eliminate troublesome residents, complete with coached witnesses and manufactured evidence. "She's completely lost her goddamn mind," Patricia whispered, while the sweet perfume of fresh strawberries and morning jasmine created a surreal backdrop for discussing criminal conspiracy. "The crazy bitch actually believes she can frame a Navy veteran for domestic terrorism." The advance warning allowed me to prepare bulletproof defenses against false accusations. Security cameras would document every interaction, while harassment evidence would demonstrate who was actually terrorizing whom. Community support crystallized faster than ice in a Florida freeze. Dr. Kraft's coalition expanded to 38 families demanding Delilah's immediate removal, while Florida veterans organizations mobilized after learning about systematic persecution of a decorated serviceman. That evening, watching fireflies dance over water my grandfather had protected for generations, I realized Delilah was about to make the fatal mistake that would destroy her completely. Desperate people do desperate things, and I was ready for whatever came next. The sabotage hit like a sledgehammer to the gut. Thursday morning, I discovered my beautiful Skeeter sitting in its trailer with engine oil drained completely and sugar poured into the gas tank like some vindictive teenager's revenge fantasy. The acrid smell of contaminated fuel mixed with my rage as I realized these bastards had escalated from harassment to felony property destruction. Advanced security footage captured 2 figures in dark clothing moving like amateur ninjas around my boat. Faces deliberately obscured but body language screaming amateur hour. The timestamp showed 3:17 a.m., prime coward hours for people too gutless to face consequences in daylight. Certified marine mechanic Jake Morrison estimated $12,000 in comprehensive engine damage requiring complete rebuilds. "Whoever did this knew exactly how to destroy a marine engine," he said grimly, his weathered hands examining the sugar-crystallized fuel system. "This wasn't random vandalism. This was targeted sabotage by someone with mechanical knowledge." Sheriff Martinez treated the incident as felony criminal mischief, dispatching crime scene technicians who dusted for fingerprints and collected DNA samples with CSI-level precision. The investigation was officially underway, but Delilah wasn't finished with her nuclear option strategy. She simultaneously launched attacks on every front like a desperate general burning her own bridges. Florida Department of Environmental Protection received frantic reports about my workshop creating immediate toxic waste emergencies, while the VA Disability Office got detailed complaints questioning the legitimacy and accuracy of my military benefits. Anonymous tips flooded the IRS about my alleged massive unreported boat restoration income, designed to trigger comprehensive audits that could financially cripple me through bureaucratic warfare alone. The coordinated assault was designed to overwhelm me with simultaneous government harassment from every possible agency, a strategy that reeked of professional consultation rather than amateur desperation. The community meeting ambush arrived via surprise announcement. Delilah scheduled an emergency public safety meeting for Saturday morning, inviting Orange County officials, sheriff's department, and local media without bothering to inform the supposed threat being discussed. Her plan was transparently obvious: present a united community front demanding legal action against the dangerous problem neighbor threatening their peaceful paradise. The agenda, leaked by Patricia Novak, included a PowerPoint presentation titled "Military Extremist Threatens Community Safety," complete with doctored photographs and fabricated witness statements. Delilah intended to railroad me in front of official witnesses before I could defend myself, but Tommy's legal team was already 3 moves ahead. We'd obtained a temporary restraining order against further harassment and property destruction while our private investigator had uncovered Delilah's hidden Cayman Islands bank accounts where yacht club fees had been systematically laundered through multiple shell companies. The financial evidence was devastating. Bank records revealed substantial kickbacks from the original Pinnacle developer for maintaining fraudulent lake access claims, with Bradley's direct complicity in sophisticated money laundering operations spanning over a decade. Meanwhile, the Florida DEP inspector arrived to investigate Delilah's toxic emergency claims and found my workshop exceeding all state environmental standards by significant margins. Inspector Rodriguez looked personally offended by the obvious false reports. "Sir, these complaints are clearly malicious harassment," he said, his frustration evident as humid morning air carried the sweet scent of blooming orange trees. Filing fraudulent environmental reports is a serious criminal offense under state and federal law. The media strategy coordination was reaching crescendo levels. Sarah Bellamy's Orlando Sentinel investigation had uncovered a broader statewide pattern of systematic HOA fraud, with our case serving as the perfect example of unchecked neighborhood tyranny run completely amok. Local WESH TV confirmed live coverage of Saturday's confrontation, while social media campaigns gained serious traction as the hashtag #JusticeForBrockFL hashtag spread throughout Florida military veteran networks. Judge Pike's attempted judicial influence abuse provided the comedy relief this nightmare needed. The retired judge contacted former colleagues, suggesting my property ownership claims were legally questionable, but his strategy backfired spectacularly when investigation revealed his own extensive history of ethical violations and conflicts of interest. The Florida Bar Association opened formal inquiries into Pike's systematic abuse of former judicial connections for personal benefit. Apparently, helping steal someone's lake access qualified as professional misconduct. My USAA insurance company's investigation team interviewed multiple witnesses about the boat sabotage while threatening comprehensive lawsuits against the HOA for organized harassment campaigns. The company offered substantial legal support for pursuing criminal charges against all perpetrators, treating this as systematic insurance fraud. Community division became completely public as the Orlando Sentinel published detailed letters from both sides of this escalating war. Dr. Kraft's coalition issued powerful public statements supporting my position and demanding complete HOA accountability, while Delilah's remaining supporters dwindled to her original conspiracy of financial criminals. The honest yacht club members were publicly distancing themselves from HOA leadership faster than tourists fleeing hurricane warnings. Local business owners rallied around their military veteran customer, with the Chamber of Commerce condemning organized economic warfare against decorated servicemen. The attempted boycott had transformed into a community-wide support movement. Tommy scheduled our formal legal presentation to the HOA board for Saturday morning, with Orange County Attorney Davidson personally attending to address potential criminal charges. Major media confirmed comprehensive coverage of what promised to be the most dramatic community confrontation in Central Florida history. As I sat on Grandfather's dock that evening, watching the sunset paint Lake Millfield in brilliant golds and crimsons, the sweet perfume of jasmine carried by gentle breezes felt like ancestral spirits preparing for righteous battle. Delilah's desperate escalation had finally pushed her past the point of no return. Tomorrow would bring either her complete surrender or her total destruction. And honestly, I was hoping for the latter. Saturday morning arrived with the electric tension of a Category 5 hurricane making landfall. The Sunset Estates Community Center buzzed with nervous energy as residents filed into the packed meeting room like spectators gathering for a gladiator match. 89 residents crowded into space designed for 50, while Orange County Attorney Davidson, Sheriff Martinez, and the Channel 9 news crew set up equipment with professional efficiency. The humid air conditioning struggled against Florida heat and human anxiety, creating an atmosphere thick enough to cut with a machete. Delilah attempted to control the chaos from her throne at the head table, frantically shuffling papers and whispering urgent instructions to her dwindling circle of conspirators. She wore a pristine white business suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, armor for a queen-facing execution. This emergency session will address the ongoing security threat posed by outside agitation, she announced with theatrical authority, her voice carrying the desperate confidence of someone who knew the walls were closing in. We will not permit hostile elements to terrorize our peaceful community. Dr. Kraft rose from the audience like an avenging angel. I invoke homeowner rights under Florida statutes to address systematic financial transparency concerns that affect every resident in this room. The power struggle was immediate and visceral. I entered with Tommy, carrying our comprehensive evidence portfolio and professional display boards that would expose 13 years of systematic fraud. The murmur that rippled through the crowd sounded like distant thunder as security footage of the boat sabotage began playing on the large projection screen. I object to this completely unauthorized presentation by a hostile non-member, Delilah shrieked, her composure cracking like cheap veneer. This man has no standing in our community proceedings. County Attorney Davidson's voice cut through the chaos with judicial authority. Criminal conspiracy matters clearly supersede standard HOA procedures. This presentation will continue. Tommy methodically unveiled our evidence like a master prosecutor delivering closing arguments. The original 1987 development agreement appeared on screen alongside detailed HOA fee collection records, while Cayman Islands bank statements showed $187,000 in systematically stolen lake access payments. Collective gasps echoed through the room as the true scope of financial theft became undeniably clear. Elderly residents clutched each other's hands while younger homeowners pulled out phones to photograph the evidence. These fees were legally required to be remitted to the property owner, Tommy explained with surgical precision. Instead, they were diverted to offshore accounts and shell companies controlled by your HOA president. Delilah's desperate defense crumbled faster than sandcastles in a tsunami. The development agreement was legally superseded by decades of established community consensus, she claimed, her voice rising to near hysteria. These payments supported legitimate alternative community improvements and necessary administrative expenses. She tried redirecting focus to my supposed hostile disruption of our peaceful retirement paradise. But the evidence was too overwhelming for deflection tactics. The smoking gun moment arrived when Tommy revealed offshore account records and detailed shell company transaction histories. The comprehensive money trail showed sophisticated international money laundering operations that would make organized crime families jealous. Here's irrefutable evidence of substantial kickbacks from the original developer for maintaining systematic fraud, Tommy announced while Sheriff Martinez took detailed notes. The criminal conspiracy was becoming absolutely undeniable. Stunned silence gave way to explosive community reaction. Angry voices demanded immediate explanations about stolen money and decade-long deception, while homeowners realized the devastating extent of systematic betrayal spanning their entire retirement investments. "How much of our money did you steal?" shouted retired teacher Margaret Walsh, her voice shaking with fury and betrayal. Dr. Kraft called for immediate HOA board dissolution and comprehensive forensic audit, while multiple homeowners publicly apologized to me for supporting the organized harassment campaign. Then came my moment, the mic drop that would end Delilah's reign forever. I stood slowly, letting the silence build until you could hear air conditioning units humming in the distance. The sweet scent of blooming jasmine drifted through open windows as I addressed the crowd with quiet dignity earned through 30 years of military service. My grandfather Ezra welcomed this community to share our family lake for decades, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room like a prayer. He never charged fees because real neighbors help neighbors. That's what genuine community actually means. I paused, looking directly at Delilah's terrified face. But neighbors don't systematically steal from each other and call it community service. The silence that followed could have stopped clocks. Sheriff Martinez announced immediate comprehensive criminal investigation while formal restraining orders were issued against any further harassment. County Attorney Davidson confirmed state fraud investigation was already underway with federal cooperation anticipated. Delilah and Bradley were quietly escorted from the meeting by uniformed deputies, their criminal empire finally collapsing under the weight of irrefutable evidence. The remaining board members voted unanimously to remove Delilah as HOA president, issued formal apologies for the harassment campaign, and requested negotiation of fair, honest, legally compliant lake access agreements. Sarah Bellamy's live coverage captured the entire dramatic confrontation, with video of my dignified response immediately going viral across social media platforms. National veterans organizations praised the exemplary dignity under extreme adversity displayed by a decorated serviceman. I proposed the comprehensive Lake Millfield Cooperative, $400 annually per boat, including proper insurance, environmental monitoring, and transparent maintenance managed through the Community Credit Union where every transaction would be public record. 38 homeowners immediately signed up for legitimate lake access, while community funds were voluntarily established to compensate for harassment damages and restore environmental destruction. Justice had finally arrived at Lake Millfield, delivered through truth, community solidarity, and the unwavering principles my grandfather had instilled in this sacred land. 1 year later, Lake Millfield had transformed from a battleground into a beacon of community cooperation that would make my grandfather proud beyond words. The Lake Millfield Cooperative thrived with 42 member families who paid their annual fees with genuine gratitude rather than grudging obligation. Monthly volunteer cleanup events brought entire families together, creating friendships that transcended the artificial barriers Delilah had tried to build. My marine restoration workshop had evolved into something beautiful, a teaching center where troubled teenagers learned valuable skills while finding purpose in honest labor. The sweet aroma of marine varnish mixed with teenage laughter as kids who'd been written off by society discovered they could create something magnificent with their own hands. Property values throughout the area increased significantly, not through fraudulent marketing schemes, but because legitimate, sustainable lake access created genuine community value that honest appraisers could document without shame. Criminal justice had prevailed with satisfying completeness. Delilah pleaded guilty to an impressive array of felony charges: fraud, embezzlement, criminal harassment, conspiracy, and international money laundering. 24 months in federal prison, $200,000 in restitution payments, and 5 years of supervised probation that would follow her like a criminal shadow. Her Florida real estate license was permanently revoked with a lifetime ban from any HOA management roles, ensuring she'd never again terrorize innocent communities. Bradley received suspended sentences and substantial financial penalties that would remind him daily about the costs of criminal conspiracy. His banking career ended in disgrace, which seemed appropriate for someone who'd betrayed the trust of elderly clients. Community leadership had undergone revolutionary transformation. Dr. Susan Kraft became HOA president through overwhelming Democratic election, implementing completely transparent governance policies that treated homeowners like intelligent adults rather than subjects of royal decree. The comprehensive financial audit revealed an additional $67,000 in recovered funds that had been hidden in various shell accounts. The community voted unanimously to establish a permanent ethics oversight committee with real authority to prevent future corruption, a safeguard that other HOAs across Florida were already copying. But the crown jewel of our transformation was the annual Ezra Millfield Memorial Lake Festival that drew over 400 attendees from across Central Florida. The celebration featured local high school marching bands, veteran honor guard ceremonies, environmental education booths, and enough community spirit to power a small city. Successful fundraising for marine science scholarships at the University of Florida had already reached $35,000, ensuring my grandfather's conservation legacy would educate future generations. My restoration workshop served as the festival centerpiece, with teenagers proudly displaying boats they'd rebuilt from rust buckets into gleaming masterpieces. The transformation in these kids' confidence was more rewarding than any military decoration I'd ever received. Environmental conservation had become our shared obsession. Strategic partnerships with Florida Fish and Wildlife created comprehensive habitat restoration projects that improved water quality while providing educational opportunities for local schools. Native fish populations flourished under careful monitoring programs that combined scientific rigor with community involvement. Extensive shoreline vegetation replanting had completely erased the environmental damage from Delilah's illegal yacht club operations, while the lake earned designation as an official conservation education site that would protect it for generations. Personal healing had arrived through unexpected channels. My marriage to Dr. Susan Kraft surprised everyone, including ourselves. Apparently, fighting tyranny together creates romantic bonds stronger than traditional dating. Our plans to expand the workshop into a comprehensive marine education center would combine her environmental expertise with my mechanical knowledge. Complete financial justice had been achieved through legal channels rather than vigilante revenge. Full restitution was paid to all systematically defrauded homeowners, while I donated my harassment damage recovery to veterans' mental health nonprofits serving Florida servicemen struggling with civilian transition challenges. Lake access fees now funded substantial annual community improvement projects chosen democratically rather than dictated by criminal conspirators. Genuine prosperity replaced artificial inflation based on fraudulent promises. Our story gained national recognition when VFW magazine featured it as a model of military dignity under extreme civilian adversity. The Florida legislature passed HOA reform legislation directly inspired by our case documentation, while our community conflict resolution template was officially adopted by state mediation services. Documentary filmmakers had optioned our story for a veterans advocacy film that would educate communities about recognizing and preventing HOA corruption before it destroyed neighborhoods. The next challenge arrived via certified letter from neighboring Seminole County. We have similar HOA problems and desperately need your expertise. Susan and I were considering expanding our community advocacy work statewide, while Tommy suggested forming a nonprofit organization to combat systematic HOA fraud throughout Florida. Looks like our mission to bring justice to Florida communities is just beginning, Susan smiled, her environmental scientist mind already strategizing solutions for widespread corruption. Community wisdom had emerged from our shared struggle. Neighbors can overcome serious division through honest communication and patient education. Military values of honor and service successfully translate into civilian community building. Environmental stewardship requires genuine collaboration rather than empty promises. Justice achieved through proper legal channels creates lasting positive change rather than temporary satisfaction. The practical lessons for viewers were crystal clear. Always verify HOA legal incorporation status and actual enforcement authority before accepting any demands. Document systematic harassment comprehensively for effective law enforcement intervention. Community allies prove more powerful than individual legal action alone. Environmental false claims create serious criminal liability under both state and federal law. As sunset painted Lake Millfield in brilliant oranges and purples during our second annual festival, children learned to fish from patient volunteer instructors while families enjoyed peaceful lake access that honored both tradition and fairness. The American flag flew proudly over grandfather's completely restored fishing lodge, its stars and stripes reflecting off water that belonged to honest people who understood the true meaning of community. Share your worst HOA nightmare stories in the comments below. Let's expose these neighborhood tyrants together. Subscribe if you want to see more justice served to petty dictators who think they can steal from hard-working Americans. Remember, bullies always count on good people staying silent and doing nothing. Sometimes you have to fight hard for what's right, but you never have to fight alone when your cause is just.